An entitled Karen calls the cops on me for trespassing on my own property, and I honestly could not be more annoyed. First, a little bit of backstory. For most of my life, I was raised by my grandfather. Nothing was wrong with my family life or anything, just a few sets of circumstances that's a whole story in and of itself. We live in a suburban area surrounded by woods, and he owns about 10 acres into the woods, with the boundaries clearly marked by stone walls. One of these stone walls separates my grandfather's land from a cul-de-sac, and up until now, we have had zero problems with any of them. In fact, my grandfather was usually more than happy to give permission to neighbors who politely asked him to use his land. That is, if they had a good reason. One of these neighbors had asked my grandfather if he could dump the sticks and leaves in his yard over the stone wall. My grandfather agreed, as he rarely uses that part of the property anyway. This will be important later. My grandfather is very healthy for his age and is still strong as an ox. That being said, he has a few minor health issues, including vertigo spells. So I've been trying to help him around the yard more and more, as well as at the time just staying active outside and away from crowds. Recently, I've started the project of cleaning up the underbrush around the wooded area. A large pine tree had fallen a few months before and almost hit one of the porches in the cul-de-sac. My grandfather cut up the tree and removed the pieces in the neighbor's yard, but it was too deep in the woods to pull them out with the tractor. This then leads me to going back to the pine tree and trying to clear a path back to the house from there. I was behind the stone wall, cutting and pulling up saplings, when I hear a glass door of the cul-de-sac open and close as an angry, entitled Karen storms out onto the porch in a bathrobe. She looks at me and says, "What are you doing here? You can't be here." When I asked her why I'm not allowed to be here, she then said, "It's because you're trespassing, idiot. Do you think you can just hang out in the woods behind my house with my kids inside? Get out of here right now before I call the cops." At this point, I'm just looking at her, trying to figure out what to say. I mean, I get it. It can be a little weird seeing someone in the woods behind your house, especially if you haven't seen them there before. I looked at her and I said, "Ma'am, I'm sorry if I scared you, but my family owns this part of the woods. I'm just cleaning up back here. In fact, my grandfather and I were here just a few months back, taking care of that tree that fell down in the woods. I just need to clear a path so we can get it out of here." At this point, I thought it was purely a misunderstanding, so I gave her the benefit of the doubt. That is, until she made an absolute fool of herself and caused herself more problems than she probably ever thought she would need in her life. She responded and said, "Don't be ridiculous. Those were laborers that my boyfriend's dad hired. You don't own that land. My boyfriend's dad owns all of this." At this point, she gestured her hand all around her. "Now I'll tell you one more time to get out of here before I call the cops." At this point, I'm kind of at a loss because I'm really thinking that I might be dealing with a genuine idiot, because outside of property boundaries, the woods are owned by the town water plant and don't have public access. I'm also taken aback that she referred to us as laborers. So I looked her square in the eye and I said, "Guess you're just gonna have to call the cops then, because I'm not moving. And I don't care what you, your boyfriend, or your boyfriend's dad has to say about it." I shrug as I lean back against the wall and pull my phone out to call my grandfather to tell him where I was. He tells me that he will be there in a few minutes and to hang tight. She then dramatically proceeds to call 911 and tells them that there's a shady individual on her property refusing to leave, and she's afraid for her life. I start getting nervous at this point, even though all I have on me is a hooked branch cutter. So I call the police non-emergency number, and I briefly explain the situation as just a land dispute that got out of hand, and that I'm unarmed and waiting on my own property. He assured me that it would be settled when the officers arrive, which didn't help my nerves at all. Just then, I hear my grandfather pull up and see him walking through the yard towards us. The entitled Karen looks up and says, "What? Stay back, you cannot come into my yard." My grandfather growls back and says, "Keep your mouth shut, you idiot." He growled as he walked over to me and climbed over the wall so he was on my side. My grandfather then looks at this lady and says, "Now who on earth do you think you are? And why are you yelling at my grandchild?" The entitled Karen then repeats herself, "My dad owns all of this, and both of you are going to get arrested for trespassing." My grandfather then let out a dramatic, indignant laugh as he explained to this lady that she is in for a shock when she finds out that no, he does not own this land. After them yelling back and forth for a few minutes, 2 cop cars pull up and 3 officers come walking into the yard. As soon as they do, she starts screaming again about how we have no right to be in the woods behind her house where we can see her kids inside. The cop looks at my grandfather and asks if we do own the property behind the wall, to which my grandfather says yes and pulls out his wallet to show his address. I then pull out Google Maps to show the property lines of that address and how it reaches out through the woods and at the end of this wall. The cop cop then agrees with us, and we explain that we're back there to try and get this tree removed, as well as any remnants of the tree that fell down. Now, this is the same house of the guy that my grandfather agreed could dump his leaves and his sticks over the wall onto my grandfather's property. Eventually, that man shows up and rings out this entitled Karen for basically harassing us as we're just trying to clean up. And all the while, this entitled Karen would not stop screaming, basically claiming that my grandfather was some creepy old man, and my blood was boiling at this point. When the dust settled, the man who did own that house made this entitled Karen go inside as the cops allowed me and my grandfather to go about our business. We found out a few weeks later that the entitled Karen was evicted for a number of reasons, with this little incident being the last straw. And honestly, with all things considered, I have absolutely no sympathy for this entitled Karen whatsoever. How crazy and irrational is that? To freak out on someone who's just trying to get a tree cleared out and then act like a complete fool when the owner of the house shows up and tells them basically to shut up. Good for this original poster for standing their ground and for not letting some weird entitled Karen try and boss him around. My girlfriend's family disapproves of me and forced us to break up, and I'm honestly not sure how to proceed. My girlfriend and I have now been separated for almost a month now. We dated for 1.5 years. I met her through school, so we graduated the same year, same program, same everything. We grew up and came from vastly different backgrounds. We're both Chinese Canadian, but I grew up in a closer to poverty environment, where if I wanted something, I would have to work and save up for it myself. No help from my parents, as they could not afford to do so. On the other hand, she grew up in a financially stable environment, though her parents have been separated for over 30 years, but the dad still financially supports them for everything, including all their expenses up until earlier this year. Basically, her mom doesn't approve of me because of my family background and wants her to date and marry someone who is already stable, as well as someone who can provide for themselves, if not more. And honestly, I'm just hurt by this. I cannot change my family background and how I grew up, but because of the environment I grew up in, I had to grow up very quickly and mature much faster than those my age, due to the fact that if all fails, I have no one to fall back on. In fact, I get along better with most people who are older than me and can relate with them a lot more than people my own age. When I graduated, I landed a 6-figure job that would allow me to save more money than I've ever seen in my bank account. Despite the way we grew up was so different, she was willing to work together with me to build a future together and was willing to settle for less. Even though she's used to a more expensive lifestyle compared to me, she did not mind my family's background one bit. Her and I were very compatible. We can relate on most, if not everything, and we share the exact same morals, values, ethics, and goals. Some of those being moving out together and eventually being homeowners together. We both went into this relationship without the intentions of looking for a relationship. We met through school, got the same internship at the same company during our senior year, and we still hung out during every lunch break that we could. And when we first started dating, we were on the same page for everything. However, her family, mostly her mom, have been completely unsupportive of us since day one and would try everything just to break us apart. Her mom even sat her down multiple times with the rest of her family and forced her to break up with me in the past. I understand that if you live under your parents' roof, you go by their rules, but I feel like the family has overstepped the boundary here. For instance, when she wants to go out with her friends, she would need her mother's approval, even though she's in her mid-20s. And if she's not home right away after work, her mom would call her non-stop, asking her to come home right now. I noticed the vibe and energy is not the same anymore each time after she has a sit-down talk with her family. So one day, I initiated the conversation, basically asking the hypothetical question of if we should just break it off, because I can see that she's very torn, as well as drained of being caught in the middle between myself and her family. Through that conversation, we agreed that it would be best because she said that she would like her family to be supportive of her in case we do not get married. Not even 1 week after our breakup, the mom got the older sister to set up my ex-girlfriend with somebody else, all because he was better off and had more money. When she told her mom she wants to get back with me because that's who truly makes her happy, her mom flipped out and said if she ever gets back with me, she will never speak to her again, practically disowning her. We're doing no contact right now because she said if she explores, she wants it to be genuine. I'm not sure what I can do next here because we both saw each other spending the rest of our lives together, all the way up until this date when we had to break it off. I can confidently say our feelings for each other has not changed one bit, despite everything that we've gone through, especially with the family. I do want to get back with her, but I'm not sure if I'm in the right place to to do so. What should I do? I've got to be honest, the fact that your girlfriend didn't fight for you and say, you know what, I'm 26 years old and it's time for me to make my own decisions in my life is a giant red flag. She basically let her mom decide what she can and can't do. And I think the reason why she has to call to make sure she can come home on time or that she can even go out with her friends in the first place is because she is still enabling that behavior. And that, in my opinion, is completely inappropriate. If your ex actually cared about you, she would have fought to stay with you. And that's just my opinion. So honestly, I think you should just move on and find somebody else. It hurts. It really does. But she has been more than willing to allow her family to walk all over her plans. And you're making 6 figures a year. It's not like you're making some small amount of money and you wouldn't be able to support yourself as well as her in your relationship. Her family's being ridiculous. And the fact that she said nothing and let this just kind of all play out is more than enough reason, in my opinion, for you to move on and find somebody else. My husband wants no part of my family, and I honestly don't know what to do. My husband and I have been together for 8 years and have been married for 2. My family and him have always been somewhat close. He doesn't have much of a relationship with his family. There has been years of off and on drama with my family that somehow my husband gets dragged into. Through these situations, it has caused my husband to not want to be around my family. It started years ago when my younger sister and him were close. We used to hang out frequently. We planned a trip to Las Vegas for my birthday and anniversary, and he paid to have her come out and surprise me, with her just paying him back for the plane ticket. On our anniversary, we asked for some alone time and if she could hang out in the casino or the restaurant or just go shopping. 2 hours go by and she is nowhere to be found. Apparently, she got super angry that we were up there for so long and she felt like she was being ignored for hours. She finally shows up to our room and packs her stuff and switches her flight to that night. She didn't talk to us for months after that. She blocked us and ignored us at family events. Through the years, there's been more and more of these situations. She gets upset, doesn't communicate, and then blocks us. We have given her chance after chance again and again. The last straw was in August, when we planned her bachelorette party. We paid hundreds of dollars for the hotel, the decor, and the show tickets. She got upset that my sister and I wanted to have more control of the decorations, claiming that the fun was getting sucked out of it because she felt like we were just robots planning this party. She got upset and canceled the entire weekend. She even kicked us out of her wedding and said that if we showed up, we would get escorted out and that she wants nothing to do with us. We talked a week later and she said we weren't kicked out anymore and that we can come. However, I tried to discuss these issues that are repetitive and she was just super defensive. My husband and I have also had similar situations with my other sister. Although only once, we were blocked and didn't talk for almost a year. We seem to be on a better page now and things are fine for now, that is. My husband has been keeping his distance and not coming with me to dinners and other events. My mom called and asked why he hates them, and she accused me of being embarrassed of my family. And now, my husband just really doesn't want any parts of my family. My sister is getting married and he doesn't want to attend because he just doesn't want any awkward situations, and his anxiety is bad to begin with. My husband feels my family is toxic. He doesn't have a close family, so he doesn't know what it's like to grow up super close. I'm trying to navigate this situation because I feel stuck in the middle. What should I do? The original poster is absolutely in denial. Your family is toxic. Your husband is right. These repetitive outbursts of these people moving out of your life over seemingly small instances is not cohesive to what I would call a close family. This is instead a very toxic family. Your sister is toxic, your mom is toxic, your other sister is toxic, all of them incredibly toxic. If anything, it sounds like he grew up in a healthy family and you don't know what that's like. If I was your husband in this situation, I wouldn't want anything to do with your family either. They sound horrible to deal with. It sounds like they're just a bunch of basket cases waiting to just explode on one another. And then when you pull away, they guilt trip you into coming right back in around them. And this cycle repeats on and on. And personally, I would not want anything to do with that. You claim that your husband doesn't have a close family, but honestly, I don't think you do either. Because based on the examples that you've given, your family just does not seem stable or in any way kind or understanding. And it also seems like this drama has never been addressed, which is why your sister got super defensive when you tried to talk to her about it and say, hey, this has got to stop. So maybe it's time to do some self-reflection and consider the possibility that your husband is probably right. Because if I was in his shoes, I wouldn't want to deal with this toxic garbage either. My husband wants me to cut contact with my sister because she cheats. And at this point, I don't know what to do. My husband just dropped this on me. I am totally clueless about the whole situation, and I'm not even sure how I am feeling right now. now. Months ago, my husband bumped into my sister's fiance. We'll call him Mark, that's not his real name. And they were not particularly close, but they knew each other. My husband was coming to pick me up for a date, and Mark was surprised because my sister told him that she was hanging out with me. And once he said that, this set off an alarm for both of them. I have to provide some clarity before the next part, because both me and my sister moved to the same city for our job, while our parents are back in our hometown. So both of us are very close and spend a lot of time together. Sometimes my sister would just show up after work and we will go and get a drink or something like that. Then, at one point, my sister told Mark that she was going to hang out with me again, and my husband nonchalantly mentioned it and thought we would be hanging out instead of my sister. I didn't think much of it at the time, since my sister does sometimes just show up. I ended up calling my sister to say I would be hanging out with my husband and asked her not to come along if she's planning to. My husband and Mark then take this as if I was helping cover up for my sister. They then checked both mine and my sister's phone. Of course, my husband found nothing on mine, but Mark found some text messages that definitely did not look good. They hired a private investigator to follow both me and my sister around, and they caught my sister going to a hotel with a guy multiple times. Jumping to the present day, I am very angry about this. I felt like my husband can't trust me at all, but the circumstances seem a little bit more reasonable, especially when I have the full context. I asked him why he didn't talk to me about this, and he said if I knew, my sister would know as well, and they wouldn't be able to get any evidence to prove that she was cheating. And you know what? I am angry that he is probably right. I would have most definitely talked to my sister if I had known what was going on and tried to talk her out of it. My husband now wants me to cut contact with my sister because he said we are too close, and he is worried that she will be a bad influence. Our relationship will be over if he found out I'm helping my sister. But the thing is, my sister has been my support when I am going through hardship, and now that she is going through a problem, I can't imagine not being there for her. I also hate the fact that I know I should be angry with my sister rather than my husband, but I just don't in this situation. What should I do? I think you need to understand that your sister's problem is absolutely her own problem. She did this to herself. She blatantly cheated, and she used you to try and cover up for those cheating incidents, and she got caught red-handed. But with that in mind, I think it's incredibly inappropriate for the original poster's spouse to give them some kind of ultimatum, to say, you know what, you can't support your sister anymore or I'm gonna walk out on you. Yeah, you can be upset with your siblings' decisions, but to say you can never talk to them ever again because of this seems incredibly ridiculous and a little extreme in my opinion. So I honestly think having a conversation about this would really go a long way, because cutting a sibling out of your life is not nearly as cut and dry as that, and the original poster's husband needs to understand that it's not nearly that simple. There is a lot of nuance and a lot of gray area there, and that kind of decision deserves a lot of thought. My parents are hostile to my fiance over his lack of education, and I honestly don't know what to do. We've been together for 3 years and engaged for 2 months. I come from a highly formal educated family. Both of my parents have master's degrees. 3 of 4 of my grandparents attended college, and 1 of my siblings has a PhD. I've got my undergrad, but personally, I probably wouldn't have gotten it if it wasn't on a full scholarship, which I got because I had insane tiger parents. I've had a lovely career in a different field that I studied, and will not be treating my children in close to the same manner that my parents treated me. My fiance was not as fortunate. His family didn't put any value on education, so he was never pushed to be a good student, and very likely had a learning disorder that was never fully addressed. His dad walked out on his family when he was 16, and he went to work to support his mom. He's highly intelligent and a hard worker, but he can come off as kind of ignorant. His basic history knowledge is patchy, he struggles with writing, and he doesn't use proper grammar when he speaks. But this hasn't been a hurdle in his professional or personal life though. My parents haven't been very accepting of this. They only met him a few times while we were dating, since they live across the country from me and don't visit much. They were cold to him and kept leaving him out of the conversation, even when it was on a subject that my fiance knows something about. Since we've gotten engaged, they've been begging me to turn him down and move on, with various hypothetical scenarios of how awful my life will be if I marry someone lacking in education. I've told them point blank that they don't have any say in this decision, and I've been ignoring them ever since then. I'm fine limiting contact with my parents until they come around. They will eventually accept the situation, seeing as they behave pretty similarly when one of my siblings married a 21-year-old and another enlisted in the army, but it's going to take longer than we'll be engaged. It's also not not important to me to have a super close relationship with them. There have been periods in my life where we don't have any relationship. They aren't the greatest people, and I've gone all of my adult life without their financial or emotional support. However, my fiance is incredibly upset and wants them to like him. He knew this was going to be a possibility, but the reality hit him like a steamroller. I tried to prepare him for this as best as I could, but given my parents don't visit often, and we have jobs that prevent us from flying across 3 different time zones, there weren't enough opportunities for him to see what kind of jerks they really can be. He also really doesn't like the idea of limiting contact with my parents. He is very tight with his own family and can't fathom the idea of mine being cut out. At this point, I'm not sure how to intervene on both fronts. My parents are going to need time and years to get used to this reality, and I'm not going to be able to force them to accept him. I don't think I can get my fiance to just let the situation go and wait it out with me though. So I'm kind of at a crossroads and I really don't know what to do. I think the old saying of "it takes one to know one" really does come into play here, because it sounds like your fiance just doesn't understand how toxic your family was early in your life. It sounds like they really pushed you to get an education, and they put a lot of value on that as opposed to who you are as a person. And I mean, sure, absolutely, education's important, don't get me wrong, but it kind of seems like your parents had their priorities mixed up. And it's also kind of alarming that they would treat your future husband like this. Your fiance clearly came from an unfortunate circumstance, and he did not have the opportunities that you as well as your parents probably did have. So it's unfair for them to make some kind of character assessment based on the education that he wasn't allowed to have. He had to start working when he was 16 just to support his family. I'm sure your life would be much different if you were in that situation as well. So your parents are being super unreasonable here. If anything, it might be time for your fiance to spend more time around your parents. Maybe then he can really see how toxic and abusive these people really are. Either way, hopefully this all gets worked out for you, and hopefully your parents don't play any role in ruining this relationship you have with your fiance. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, use the playlist at the top of the description. And the next time you live stream, use the Cream of the Crop music. Search Cream of the Stream on Spotify or whatever platform you use for copyright-free music to use for your next stream.